Hey, Tommy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Looks like we're in the right place.
I hope so. How's your week been going?
Yeah. Okay. Just last couple of days trying to get some things wrapped up. We're going on a family trip here on Monday, so gonna be out of town for like 10 days. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Where to? I don't know if everyone else can
Uh,
hear us or it's just us talking.
yeah. I'm not.
Should
I'm
be
not too
just us.
sure. I know.
Everyone will know where you're going.
Oh, we are live. Here we go. Okay. Well, we're here, but I think maybe we. He says that we want to know. Well, we're going to Taiwan, so we're going to
Oh,
Taiwan for
nice.
about 10 days, and yeah, yeah. So um,
That'll be awesome.
yeah,
I had a
just
layover there once and the airport was really nice. But yeah, that'll be awesome. I'm jealous.
yeah, yeah, it'll be fun. I don't know. We're taking our 2 and 4 year old, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, might
yeah,
might be a little difficult, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. So 15-hour flight, and we'll see how it goes.
Hi.
Yeah.
Apologies for that.
All
Yeah,
good.
hi,
How
I'm
are
Brittany.
you?
great. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
Sorry, a little technical difficulties. They didn't give me access to come on the stage, so now I'm here. So,
No, no.
yeah. Well, thank you both for joining, and thank everybody who is joining on the call. This is our webinar on the future of returns, a roadmap to success in 2023. So, thought we could get things started with just doing a quick round of intros with our two speakers that we have today, Wyatt Gilmore and Tommy Lee. So, quickly, I'm Brittany LeBeau. I'm the manager of enterprise merchant success here at Loop. So I work closely with our largest merchants to just ensure they're getting the most value out of their returns platform. So Wyatt, why don't I kick it over to you to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Wyatt Gilmore, co-founder of Grant Stone Shoes. We started back in about 2016. It's kind of a joint effort between myself and the factory that I was employed by at the time, working out of Xiamen, China. So, we were making a few different types of Goodyear welt boots and shoes, loafers, kind of working with different types of leathers, things like that. So I was more on the development and sales side, working for the factory. And yeah, it was about 6, 7 years with then when we decided to start Grant Stone. And so we started off as really just making a few hundred pairs of shoes and shipping them over to a family friend's warehouse in Connecticut while I was still in China, and just opened a Shopify account and just sold basically one pair at a time for the first year or so until we kind of took it a little more seriously. Moved back to my hometown here in Michigan to open an office and warehouse so we could do the fulfillments here, and kind of ship around the world and stuff. So yeah, we moved over here. This was six years ago or so, and yeah, I think we started with Loop almost 2 years ago now. Maybe it was 2 years ago, and yeah, we kind of have a little system that's been working pretty well so far. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to dive into the growth you guys have experienced and just kind of how you've worked with Loop. So we'll get to that in a second. Tommy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Everybody. Yes, my name's Tommy Lee, and I'm Director of Operations at Toro Shoes. So I started with the company about a year and a half ago. So the company has actually been around for 15 years, kind of has had a few different ownerships, but the current regime and ownership started about 3 years ago. And the previous CEO kind of helped rebuild the brand and company really during like right when quarantine started and was happening. So I was one of the first hires and the first person in operations. So I pretty much manage all things like with our 3PL, demand planning, our factory in Italy, kind of back-end website development, customer service. So we're a mighty team of 3, and we just made our 4th hire. So 4 of us on the team. And really, I was brought in just to help us make things scalable and as we're experiencing a lot of growth. So since we kind of relaunched, we've just had a huge increase in growth year over year. So we started with Loop 2 just to help with, started as really just to help with from a customer service standpoint, but as we'll get into with the slides, we've found some really other great useful tools to be a revenue builder for us too. So yeah, nice to see you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, team of 4, efficiencies are key. Automation is key. So we'll definitely chat through that. So awesome. Well, to get started, just saying, like, here at Loop, we are hyper focused on the impact returns we'll have in 2023 and the future, which is why we released the future of returns as a guide for our merchants and all merchants really. And today we're going to be touching on the third pillar, which is the future of merchant growth. So we're going to dive into that. But before we do, I want to take it a step back and just kind of talk to you both about where you guys are today, look at some of your results and performances, and talk through kind of how you've utilized Loop to get those results. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me just 1 second. All right, great. So Wyatt, I'm going to start with you. So you mentioned just your hyper growth and the amazing trajectory that you guys have been on. So really looking at from 2021 to 2022, you guys saw a lot of growth. And so would like to kind of have you walk us through maybe some of the pain points you were facing as you guys were growing so rapidly, and how you guys were able to kind of manage through that growth.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the main thing that we always will focus on and kind of struggle with, as things change, month to month and year over year, is just, for us in our particular business, it's customer service. So we're putting a lot of effort into customer service, having anywhere from 2 to 3 people doing it full time who are here with us in the office and warehouse that's connected. And so it's kind of built that way as well, just because we did decide to, we've been warehousing ourselves here. And so, that all kind of ties in together with Loop, just because that is, being direct to consumer, that is the majority of the communication that we're having. It's people who are emailing in about sizing, and then people who already have their orders and they're coming back with questions, whether does it fit, should I get another pair to try them at the same time, compare them, can I send one back? They're trying to figure out, and everyone's a little bit different. Do they want to send it back, do an exchange, have 2 at the same time, and all of that. So I would say the customer service has been the biggest focus or thing that we've had to really put a lot of effort towards, to make sure that doesn't slip through the cracks. So, that's in between that and the inventory. Inventory is always going to be a huge one. I mean, especially when we're focusing on, some of the numbers like this for Loop. It's, if people get something and then they realize they need a half size up or down or a different width, but then you don't have it, the exchange rate's going to be pretty dismal, and you're going to have a lot of returns because you don't have what they need. So that has been the main focus, is making sure the inventory is sound. You have what you need, which I guess you'll never get that 100% right, but getting as close as you can, and then just being there to kind of answer questions quickly. But we go out of our way to have customers email us, on product pages. We call it out, we give sizing advice, but basically have hyperlinks throughout saying, if you're not sure, email us. Same thing with all the confirmation emails and shipping emails and, contact page. We're basically saying, reach out to us. And I think it's pretty important for what we're doing, just because a lot of customers don't expect a response. Sometimes I think it's, sometimes they're surprised, even just because, you buy things on Amazon, you buy things from these big companies, you don't really expect to have customer service to begin with. So you kind of have to go out of your way to say, hey, we are here, and please do reach out to us, because sometimes if they don't, they might return something just to get something else, and then just to go back to the original pair because it actually felt better. So a lot of times you can kind of jump in even when they've already created a return label and say, hey, is there something we can help you with here? And usually that's if they reach out and they say, hey, I'm trying to return this. What should I do? And then we kind of tell them, hey, this is the steps. But by the way, is there anything we can help you with regarding size or leather questions or something like that? And I mean, a lot of times you can kind of fix the problem right there. And so they don't need to ship something back, damage the packaging, and then go through the process of reshipping something else that may not be necessary. So it's a double-edged sword because you're putting yourself out there and basically your inbox out there to, you want people to reach out, but that takes a ton of time. And sometimes it can actually hurt conversion rates, right? I mean, having, warning signs basically throughout the product page saying, hey, reach out to us before you purchase. A lot of people say that's going to, inevitably kind of hurt the conversion rate and the likelihood of someone just going ahead and making that purchase. But yeah, you have to find that line where you want them to go ahead, but hopefully you can reduce the possibility of them, the likelihood of them having to return it or exchange it.
Yeah, it sounds like, you guys have been just really hyper focused on having that really great customer experience throughout the funnel. So when they're shopping your site, they can reach out and ask questions to when they're returning. So would love to just kind of hear your point of view on how first automating the returns process, automating the exchange process, and also opening up the ability to exchange across your website maybe has improved your customer experience and maybe efficiencies for your team.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing that we found is, we had caught up briefly before about this regarding, the different options you have with Loop, within the system with the settings as far as allowing, giving credits or discounts to shop now to encourage exchanges versus returns and to give them more information or incentives. And the nice thing about that we found is we've tried a little bit of everything, and you have a lot of options, right? So for us, the automation portion of it, I think, was basically crucial. I mean, the nicest thing for the customer is to be able to go to the footer, click on a link, and then basically put in their order information and start it by themselves. Because at the same time, while people do like that service, some people like the service of reaching out and kind of having that dialogue. Other people don't. They don't want to deal with that. They don't want to have to email in. A lot of people will just say, I'm not even going to return it if I have to email customer service for a return label. I've seen that many, many times on forums and Discords and things like that, where they just say, hey, look, if I had to reach out to a company and basically try to find my way around getting a return label, I'm not going to do it. So I think it's almost like a prerequisite as far as having some of that automated, if you would like customers to be able to somewhat easily exchange or return products.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, it opens the door for people to do that without reaching out when they could have had that conversation. But I think those are also, I mean, a lot of those people are the same, that they're not going to reach out to have a conversation. They're just going to kind of move on and do something else. So yeah, it is that kind of fine line of letting it be automated to the point where the people who want to be able to do this themselves, or maybe it's if you're selling apparel, maybe it's your fourth or sixth item for that, that person, they don't need to reach out and have a conversation each time. So they can sit there and do it themselves, and basically have a return label within, 45 seconds. And meanwhile, they're giving us all the information we need. So our customer service team, me included, I can go into Loop at any time and see, well, we've got 50 returns outstanding, or 150, and 30 of them are going to be returned today. So that whole tracking part of it, everything else is pretty crucial, because before Loop, we did a few different ways. The first few years was kind of manual through and through, even allowing customers to return it by themselves, making their own return labels. And then we use UPS returns at one point, but this is kind of the first time in the last couple of years using Loop. It's something that's this detailed while being automated. So yeah, I mean, it means a game changer, just because the person doing customer service, they essentially don't even have to go to Shopify a lot of times to do exchanges, to do refunds. they're right there in Loop and they have all the order information and everything else. So, and they can easily tie that to the tickets, whether that's an email, customer service email or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a big part of what we do. I mean, we try to keep everything honestly as manual as possible, as far as when someone actually sends back the pair or an item. We sell other items as well, as far as accessories, things like that. We do go through them first before going into Loop and actually submitting, an exchange, which will create the order automatically, or submitting a refund. So we could even be more automated than we are. We're kind of forgoing some of those things, and we could make it a little bit easier depending on what stage we're in.
Yeah, I want to double click on a couple of things you said. So first was the manual versus automation. I think that's one of the nice things that Loop does, is give you the optionality of when you want to process the return. Do you want to QC it first, or do you want to go ahead and issue that exchange when you know that product's being sent back to you? And you also mentioned just customers, kind of the importance of that smooth returns process. And we found that over 95% of customers actually review the return policy before making a purchase. And that over 57%, if they have a poor returns experience, they won't come back and shop. So yeah, definitely important to get those customers purchasing and then staying with you. So awesome. Well, I thank you so much, Wyatt. I'm going to kick it over to Tommy to kind of go through some of his growth that they've been experiencing and what they've been able to accomplish with Loop. So yeah, Tommy, same thing. You have seen, like you mentioned, some rapid growth. And I think one of the exciting things when we were looking at your journey with Loop is that from launch to where Loop launched to where you are now, you've been able to really decrease your refund rate. So almost 20% decrease in refund rate, boost your retained revenue, and increase your upsell per return. So would love to kind of talk through, like, how have you been able to achieve improved revenue retention, decrease refunds, and kind of what strategies have you tried or put in place to achieve that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, really when we first implemented Loop, or before we implemented Loop, we used platform Shippo to generate like cost-effective shipping labels. So really that was an email to us every single time, and we would work with the customer to figure out the reason for returning, trying to track all of that, creating the labels manually. And it was very difficult with our 3PL at the time, similar to a lot of the testaments that Wyatt spoke to, that it was just really difficult to track everything, especially as this volume was increasing. We had one person doing customer service at the time, and proud to say we actually still do. And I think a lot of that is because of everything we're able to do with Loop. So yeah, we really implement it as a way just to help streamline that process, to make it, we're fully a D2C company. So having a good returns portal experience is just so huge for our customers, especially in a, online shoes naturally has a higher return rate. So we know there's going to be a lot of people who do need to exchange sizes. So we felt like the more efficient we can make that process, the better it's going to be for the customer to hopefully not just return it for a refund. Similar thing, like being a small brand that maybe a lot of people don't know of, most people aren't expecting, probably as Wyatt said, to hear back from someone so quickly and have such an effective, voice. So that's something we really also like pride ourselves on. And being a higher end brand, we really just try to provide the customer with that same like luxury experience every time they reach out to us. So yeah, we really, as I mentioned, implemented Loop just to really help streamline that process. And since then, we really, our account rep Rachel is great, and we met with her a lot as we started using Loop and as we continued to kind of enhance the features that we have. And really what we've done, I'll dive into each kind of section, but really what we've done is we've trusted the data that Loop's given us, and we've kind of tried everything that falls within the account and what we have capabilities to do within our with our subscription. So a lot of those are the things you're seeing on the screen. So I just feel like because we've met with our reps so much and relied on them and the support team, we've just built as good of a portal as we can. And we get a lot of customers who still do reach out to us, and we direct them to the portal, or we have a really good template that we use anytime someone reaches out, and we use that as an opportunity to talk about our upsell and everything we offer to try and push that exchange or upsell versus a refund. So we've really just focused on making it as streamlined as a process. We have a QR code on our packing slip that has a link directly to Loop, so it should be really easy for the customer when they receive their shoes to find that portal. And really, so like diving into each kind of area for upsell, we worked a lot on developing like which credit really through our rep and Rachel. And we started with just offering 10% or a little bit over 10% of our average cart. So what we found with the reason that I think has driven the average upsell per return is sometimes a lot of customers have started with one of our lower priced items. And then when they've gone into the portal, they've seen we give an extra credit of $40. So a lot of people have kind of upgraded or jumped to that next tier of items, which is really the driver for that, for those numbers. People can add accessories. We have accessories that are near that $40 item too. And also we've seen a lot of people add customization. So you can personalize our shoes and engrave your initials on there and things like that. Jumping into, or sorry, did you add something before I go to revenue? Cool. Yeah. So jumping into refunded revenue, I think like generally we feel that items priced at our point, like people are researching and it's not so much just impulse buy. So I think a lot of people are more willing to figure out the right size to keep it versus refunding. And, you know, they're really more invested, or this is a product for their wedding. We do a large number of wedding shoes. And so people want to naturally like find the right size. So we feel that works to our advantage a lot. People are buying these for a specific event, things like that. So they're wanting to end up with a shoe at the end of the day. We do offer free exchanges. And as I mentioned, we do shop now, instant exchanges, and we do $40 as that shop now or shop later. And then another thing we focus on was really making sure like in the free exchange part of our portal, like every product in that style is available without having to go to shop now. So making the exchange process where, you know, someone orders a brown leather shoe and we're out of stock in the size they need, they can then easily see every other shoe we have in that style, similar colorways, where hopefully they're more likely to try out a different size. And I think overall with our average cart, we do a lot of wedding orders, like bulk wedding orders, which really helps, I think has driven that number higher. We offer customization, and that's really helped because those items aren't returnable for one. And that helps add to the cart too. So anytime someone wants to engrave their initials on our shoes, they're, you know, spending more money in that regard. And then just our accessories and having those ready available at the checkout, like what can you add to your shoe? Such as like a no-show sock or something like that someone can add to their cart to try and boost that as much as we can. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, we really feel like anyone who's interacted with our customer service, we try to provide a second to none and really give people that luxury experience and feel. And really anytime someone emails us, we have a really good template that we use, and we make it more specific to each customer that reaches out. Really just explaining Loop, explaining how to navigate our portal. And we just always really like advertise the Shop Now feature. So I think it's a collection of all of those things we've seen. And really, as I mentioned, we rely on the Loop team a lot to help us make our portal and process just as streamlined as we can.
Yeah, I love to hear how you guys are really thinking of this returns funnel as almost a new sales channel where you can get customers in, upsell them on a higher priced product, add some accessories to their cart, you know, and you guys are obviously seeing the benefits with the strong upsell per return and that increase in retained revenue. Awesome. Well, quickly, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah, so just wanted to share with the group, if you guys, anyone in the chat wants to unlock your returns performance and benchmark data, Loop recently launched a free Shopify benchmark tool that gives you access to your returns data and compares it to similar Shopify brands. So we'll include that link in the chat, but I know that that's really been a good driver in how our brands have been looking at their strategies, seeing how their returns and refunds compare to other brands. So kind of moving forward, but the next step is really diving into the future of returns and focusing on that future of merchant growth. So we want to kind of get you guys' perspective on a few key topics that we outlined in the future of returns. So first, we know returns are growing. Loop merchants saw an increase of 30% year over year in returns, and we've seen 30% of customers do end up making a return. So it's an important part of your business. So I think you both touched upon this a little bit already, but would just love to kind of reiterate how you guys are thinking of leveraging returns as part of the shopper retention strategy and why that can be so important for a brand.
Yeah, sure. So I can start off. I think it's, I mean, for us, I'll be honest, I feel like Loop basically gives you the open door to make it as easy as possible for the customer. And so what we're basically trying to do is you use that platform, and then you kind of like almost set up little hurdles along the way because we're not doing the brick and mortar. And it's particularly because our product, most of our products, for example, one boot or one shoe has 42 variants, 42 sizes, 6 to 13, 6D to DE, triple E widths. So the sizing in general just becomes so specific to the customer. And we've had plenty of customers that try 4 sizes and literally end up getting nothing. Nothing works for the customer, and we go through the whole process for them for a couple of weeks. And sometimes that happens because a lot of people too who are looking at a product, they might be wearing orthotics or they wearing orthopedic shoes in general because of their situation. So I think, I mean, for us, it just goes right back to the customer service and initiating that dialogue to get it going. Because if we don't do that, and a lot of times, same thing, our shoe or boot, it comes off as a little heavy. It's a little stiff. The leathers are different. Every single one's different. Sometimes it look like an imperfection, and sometimes that's the way it's supposed to be. So you kind of have to have these contact points eventually if there's something going on, especially when the trigger of a return is initiated. That basically opens the door to go, okay, hey, let's make contact and see what we can do here. So or what's the concern, what's the question, if they have any. So I think that's kind of what it does, is it opens the door for that. I mean, whether you can put comments in for the return and loop, things like that, to basically have that conversation.
Yeah, and I guess we have a lot of similar things as well, but I think for us it's just been making the process as easy as possible, and like, how can we make the portal so good that it makes it easier for the customer to retain them, basically, for them to want to buy another shoe instead of just refunding it. Like when they go to that portal, maybe in their mind they have that they want to return it, and then they see all these other options that we offer, and having a branded portal with images of our shoes and whatnot. That's how we've really used returns to try and retain as many people as possible. And I think if you have a great portal that you can advertise your brand and having all the other shoes available, like we've had people where either a man or a woman will buy a woman's shoe and then they'll exchange it for a men's shoe, or vice versa. And I think like that's great because they probably originally bought the shoe for themselves or as a gift, and then they ended up either giving that other shoe as a gift or for themselves. So like building such a good brand that people want a shoe for them or someone else, and making the portal as easy to do that as possible has really been our biggest thing there.
Yeah, definitely. That a customer leaving with a product in hand, you're definitely going to have increased LTV and see that customer come back and shop you more. So that's great. I know we talked about this in our previous call, but we have seen just in the market a big shift on profitability versus just focusing on top line growth. So just wanted to ask you guys how you think about profitability versus top line growth.
Yeah, so for our company in general, we didn't have any outside initial investments and things like that. So it was basically our first couple of years. That original plan, um, breaking even was kind of a necessity, right?
Yeah.
If there's going to be continuous losses, that was going to be a problem, or even substantial loss at any point in time. So of course, the downside is scalability is always going to be very limited, and we could only grow at a certain rate. We could only try so many things. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of the process of doing it a little bit slower, going a little bit slower. You figure it out a little bit at a time with less people. Slowly add to the team instead of starting with a team of 5 or 10. And yeah, that was just kind of the direction that we had. And that comes with its own problems, of course, because our suppliers and everything else, I mean, they will be a pain for them, right? Because we're barely hitting their minimums. We're barely hitting this, the lining supplier, the upper supplier, different components in the shoes and everything else, let alone shipping. When you fall on the smaller end of the scale, it's always kind of a problem in one way or another. So yeah, it just naturally just kind of worked out that way. And of course, in times like this and stuff, it's not the worst thing ever.
100%.
Yeah, and I guess we share a lot of similar thoughts too. Profitability is really one of the main things we look at, and we want to make sure we're always growing in a profitable way. I think what we've done to really help with that is, we've stayed even during growth at the same size team essentially. And to do that, we've just had really, really good partners, from our 3PL to our factory, to platforms such as Loop that allows us to grow without increasing the team to a large number. And I think that's one thing we look at a lot as a business and as a team, is making sure we're growing profitably, really at kind of all measures. That's really the most important thing, or one of them, to us.
Yeah, I think one of the items we outlined in the future of returns was that automation is going to be key for fighting those increased costs. So yeah, let's elaborate on that. What are some other ways, like day to day, that you guys are using automation to help reduce costs?
On our side, I'll be honest, it's one of those that, if anything, that's where we lack a little bit versus other companies or brands. And I think it's mainly because we're bringing our inventory in, we're stocking, warehousing here, and then we're shipping. I mean, everything is basically out of our office and warehouse location. We only have a couple of team members who are not here on a daily basis, and they're more on the social side of things. So we've gotten away with it a little bit just because the way that the company's structured and where we physically are working on a daily basis. That being said, I mean, it really comes down to the communication between the team members here, and we're just using the basics, right? Whether that's Microsoft Teams from top to bottom, so that's from the factory to us as a brand to the customer service, and but even whether it's myself or my colleague who's in the office next door. I mean, this afternoon we might be packaging some shoes to ship them. So that is where we can get away with it a little bit, just because the way they're structured right now. But yeah, we try to test that a little bit, whether it's people working remotely, and we kind of had to be forced in that position a couple of years ago. And so yeah, you grow a little bit that way too. But so I mean, that's the way our structure is. So we end up not using as much automation, and also our scale. I think even for our business, a certain healthy scale may not, in the grand scheme of things, compared to other industries, is much smaller. Let's say you get into sneakers and things like that. It's a different world. The scale is a very, very different world. So yeah, I mean, we do try to utilize it when possible, but it's always felt like kind of doing it manually to begin with, and then slowly adding on the back end has always worked well. just because you can kind of fine tune it at the very end and figure out kind of what works best.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about like fine tuning and testing things and adjusting in a little bit. Tommy, now I know you guys use a 3PL, so would love to hear kind of what efficiencies or automation you've had with your 3PL and other ways you guys are thinking about automation.
Yeah, I think overall, like a similar thing, we don't use a ton of just, being a more of a startup, small company, we don't have a ton of, I guess, platforms or systems like that use a ton of automation. Loop is one of our main ones because it allows us to, as I mentioned, still run team of one customer service representative. And that's really one of our biggest forms of automation, but also our 3PL. So we have a really, really great 3PL. And actually one of the reasons we selected them was because of their returns process was so buttoned up and well. So we have a really just great communication with them. And also so every return they get essentially goes through a really rigorous process that we developed a standard SOP for them to that they have to follow. They take pictures of every shoe. We're able to access that through their warehouse system, which gives us like so much more credibility, I feel like, when talking to a customer. It's really rare that someone does return our shoes in bad shape, but when it does, we're able to find that directly in our warehouse system, which is great. So we really have exactly what the shoe looked like, the status it was returned in. So this just allows us to, I think, more accurately process returns and refunds and exchanges. Our 3PL has a really, really good warehouse system that they use, which just really helps us with tracking inventory, receiving inventory, tracking orders shipped, things like that, again, allows us to basically have a team of one in operations and still be able to fulfill a large number of orders. So that's really also allowed us just to have a really strategic partner that can handle all of our fulfillment and storage and returns.
Great. I see in the chat a lot of people want to know what 3PL you're using. So there. All right, awesome. So the last thing I want to touch on with the future of returns is just kind of what we mentioned, learning as you go. So trial and error, trying a lot of different things out. I know you both have explored handling fees. So would love to hear from you what the thought process was about maybe trying a handling fee and kind of where you landed with that.
Yeah, so I think for the first 3 to 4 years, it was free returns. We didn't allow exchanges because we were basically just having someone rebuy, just like if you were to buy something off of J.Crew, you can return it and then just make a new purchase for the next thing. And so we didn't have a restocking fee. And we went doing that for a little while. And I think Bianca asked a question about how to explain the return process to the customer. And for example, the $15 restocking fee that we now have. I mean, long story short, after those first 4 or 5 years, we've tried a couple different things. The restocking fee that we landed on $15 is because the product that we have, when someone gets it, we have basically anywhere from a 20 to 30% return rate. That includes exchanges in there as well. It's about a 20% chance out of those pairs that are being shipped back that they show some type of creasing. And it's because the leather we're using, they're putting them on and then barely flexing it some way, somehow, and it creases the shoe. So we can work on it here in the warehouse and kind of get it back to brand new condition, as in it looks like it's brand new out of the box. But a fraction of them you can't fix, right? So you end up selling them as B grades and everything else. The other part is the packaging. Our shoe boxes are pretty expensive just because they're dual layered, and then we've got a foam inside, we've got polishing cloths, a giveaway product in each one, extra laces, thank you cards, cards inside basically with instructions on returns and all these things. And to Bianca's question, the letting people know how the return process works, everything else. I mean, the first step that we're doing is in the packaging and the return card, that basically tells them exactly how to do it. So in every box you have that. It's not a return card. It's basically, it talks about fit, sizing, and then also if you have to return, kind of here are those steps. But I will say our customers have endless questions about everything. It can be anything and everything, but we've never really had issues with Loop. As far as, I mean, it's so self-explanatory when they, as long as you point them to the footer, which is the main thing, because someone might say, hey, where is it? But I mean, that is very far and few. I mean, it's just right there in the footer under returns. And then we have the start exchange, return hyperlink. And once they're in Loop, I mean, it is just A, B, C, D, and they're done. So rarely, I don't think we've ever really had customers reach out. And I mean, we have 50 to 150 emails a day regarding sizing, order issues, and everything else. Rarely do people have a problem navigating Loop that way. And so regarding the $15 restocking fee, we basically landed on that because of all those issues, whether it's the product being damaged, whether it's the packaging, which is honestly the bigger one, just because it's consistent. We've all seen UPS drivers and FedEx drivers and anyone else, throw a package, and the boots and shoes are heavy. Our average package is about 8 pounds. So, a $15 restocking fee, it really financially doesn't make that big of a difference when the product is at the cost that it's at, and the packaging is nearly that amount itself. It's more or less the mental aspect. When the customer goes to the returns portion of our website, we just outline very quickly, the contiguous US, what to do if it's international, and note the $15 restocking fee if you're returning for a refund. So, I mean, outside of that, we haven't had to do a whole lot there. And then I just noticed real quickly, someone had asked something about international returns, and it's the same process. We're not using Loop for that, but we do allow international returns. We just have them make their own shipping label. They ship it back, and they have to repurchase. The main reason for that, I'm pretty sure you could probably get through all of that with Loop. It's just that one of the problems when it comes to international, for our particular price point and everything else, there's the customs and duties involved. So depending on the country that they're going to, and when they ship back, we had a customer ship back $750 worth of product maybe, and they had it on the invoice, and we had to pay customs to receive the product. We had to pay DHL, the duties. So we try to really go through that process with international customers, making sure that their size, they're getting the best possible suggestion, just because even though we allow returns and exchanges internationally, it's very expensive for both parties. So just try to avoid at all costs,
Well, taking a step back, I love to hear that the returns process is so smooth that you're not getting CX tickets or inquiries around that, because I know in general, returns can be one of the highest contributors to those tickets. So seeing that probably has helped you both keep your teams lean, as we mentioned. So that's great. Tommy, you want to take us through how you guys were thinking of handling fees?
Yeah, so we actually just did it about a month ago, and I think we had a similar thing. We're kind of just testing the waters with it to see how customers react. We haven't done one for the longest time, and we just kind of felt like it's time, just because it's such a big cost to ship and return, especially with how expensive freight charges are now, even domestically. So that's something we just tested the water with, and we really similarly made sure we had our returns policy buttoned up, and we added a simple checkbox that people have to do as they're checking out that just says, I read the terms and conditions, really just to make sure we're held accountable there. And luckily we haven't had anyone email us about it, which has been good. And so really it's not a number that has really financially, again, made sense for us. It's really just to see kind of how customers react to it. So we'll probably maybe down the road, might increase it a little more to make more sense to try and recoup some of those costs. But right now it's kind of just in a testing phase, and we just felt like we looked at how many costs we were eating from returns and just felt like it was kind of the time that we had to at least try it out and see how it works. And then right now we don't limit the amount of times customers can I saw a question in there about this, how many times they can go through the returns process, which could be challenging because some people might go through it 4 times and return it. But we haven't set limits to that yet, but it's something we're definitely thinking about and we'll probably do down the road if that continues. But that's something right now. And then for international returns, basically the customer would cover international returns. So we don't do a large number of international orders. Most of our orders are domestic within the US. So it hasn't really been a big thing yet. But again, like the customer would have to pay for duties to export it, and then they're responsible for shipping it back. So that's kind of how we faced international returns currently. And then, yeah, we don't get a large number of tickets for people not able to figure out the portal. So we do have like a template built, as I mentioned earlier, for when those customers do reach out, and we kind of made our own how-to guide that we attach that email, and then just really make sure we're personally replying to that customer with any concerns that they did bring up, letting them know about our sizing, things like that, in addition to providing that PDF that has like that step-by-step guide.
Yeah, to your point, we're seeing kind of a shift in the market, which is putting like more guardrails around the returns process. So as you mentioned, like limiting the amount of times you can exchange something for free. That's something that you can easily set up in Loop, but something we definitely have heard more and more about. And also just that check return policy. I read it, I understand what it is before I submit the return. And the third thing is we are seeing a shift where before it was free returns and exchanges. Now it's really free exchanges and charging that customer who's doing a refund a handling fee. So you can recoup some of that money back, but also it's a nice way to incentivize a customer to exchange or do store credit as well. So I want to leave a little time for Q&A, but last question for you guys is just any advice you would give to a brand who's looking to start building or expanding their tech stack this year?
Yeah, I mean, our experience has been so limited in just this particular business, being a certain price point of footwear, and also warehousing and shipping here, doing the customer service here. And the only thing that we've kind of our process that we the experience we went through, and also some of the things that have worked, or the things that haven't worked. If anything, it was getting a little too far ahead of ourselves with regard to applications and different systems. So as far as we've gone all the way even to NetSuite, and we did NetSuite for a year and a half. We've done a lot of these different systems, and I think there is an app for everything, and it's nice to have those options. But Shopify. That's what we're using. And I'm sure a lot of the other store applications are very similar. They're building them out pretty well to where you can kind of limit the amount of applications you're getting yourself into or being exposed to. And it's almost just like really going through everything top to bottom and seeing what you can use before you start adding them. Because one of the worst things that can happen is you have this underlying program, whether it's your accounting program or the next thing, and if your warehouse management system or this and that, they don't speak well together, it's a problem. Luckily, we haven't had that issue with Loop. Works well with Shopify, but can't say the same for a lot of the other apps we've tried over the last 7 years. So sometimes those apps can help in a lot of ways, but it complicates it elsewhere, especially if you have someone, if you have to do the accounting yourself or anywhere near that person, they're not very happy when you start downloading more and more applications, and they start, it starts managing refunds, returns, store credits. And someone had mentioned store credit earlier. We do allow refunds and actually try to limit store credit as much as possible, just because it opens up all these strange issues down the road, whether people don't end up using it for a very long time. They come back 2 years later and ask for the money back, but we can't give it back. you end up PayPaling friends and family or something to customers because you can't refund the credit card. It's been closed since. So yeah, if anything, yeah, for us and the way that our system has worked, trying to be keep it as simple as possible has been best. But I mean, that being said, I mean, you kind of have to try different things and everything. But especially with Shopify, how it has a lot of its own things. For example, fulfillment. You can fulfill through Shopify. You can print labels. We use ShipStation, and that seems to work pretty well. But still, through the years, you find all these different things that don't work well. Whether it's creating an order in ShipStation, it may not kick down the inventory in Shopify, which I can only imagine with a 3PL how adding different applications, you have to be pretty careful and make sure that everything is kind of lined up, properly.
Yeah, having synergy between your tech stack is so key. And that's one of actually our big focuses at Loop this year, is just making sure we have that streamline connection with those key partners in our customers' tech stack, which we've had success with and been able to really create efficiencies for a lot of our brands. Tommy, what about you? Any advice you would give to a brand who's building their tech stack this year?
Yeah, I think like really as a company, our biggest focus in the early stages was really making our quality with our factory, and then this doesn't answer the tech part of the question, as great as possible, and really building our brand. And our 3PL is really kind of served as our like biggest, between the 3PL and Loop, like our biggest forms of automation. And other than that, like once we identified those really key partners, we use Shopify applications as needed too. We're pretty careful with the ones we download as well, because that's why I mentioned it can affect a lot of other things. So we really added what we need and haven't gone crazy with it, I guess. So, we evaluate even as simple as adding an app that maybe is $5 a month. Like we evaluate that and do a free trial if possible and test it out and make sure it doesn't, affect everything. So we've really taken the approach of download what we need and use what we need to serve a purpose, such as, finding a better app for discounts for Black Friday, like, finding really strong apps for things that we absolutely need, but not, just being smart and conservative with it really is how we've been.
Great. Amazing. Thank you both. I'm going to open up for some questions. I think Bianca had one in the chat. So she was asking how long it takes to process a refund or exchange for a customer that did not choose instant exchange. So I'm just going to quickly touch upon like what we can do at Loop, and then you guys can walk through what you guys are doing and how long you're seeing it take. So with Loop, you have the optionality of processing based on label updates. So we can say, once we know that item is in transit on its way back to you, we can process the exchange. And that's the most common use actually for exchange, so that we can get that exchange order fulfilled before that return actually is back in your warehouse, but it's on the way back to you. And then you can do in transit, you can do it when it's delivered. You could do delivered with a delay so that you can catch anything that might come back that is not in condition to refund. A lot of our customers do a manual check for refunds. So that can either be done through a 3PL or warehouse integration where they say, yes, good to go, no, flag this return, or like Wyatt does where it's truly a manual. So would love to see what you guys are seeing from turnaround time and how that's worked out for your customers. Wyatt, I'll start with you.
Sure. We used the initially for exchanges when the customer received the return label and UPS had scanned it, that would start the exchange process for us. We did that for a little while, but now we are back to manual. So basically, whether it's a return for a refund or an exchange, we wait till it gets back here. Not only when it has to be received, but also we go through it, and then we go into Loop and go through each and every order and basically mark it either refund or start the exchange. Start the exchange, it creates the new order automatically, the exchange in Shopify, and then we go from there. So for us, it was it's more of an accounting thing. It becomes a little tricky when you have hundreds of outstanding, because anyone can kind of start a return at any moment and maybe not put it in the mail. Some do put it in the mail within a couple of days. But at the end of a period, whether it's end of the month, end of the year, you can have hundreds of orders that are somewhere in between. And that really affects your inventory count. Now, it may not be for everyone, just because we have the amount of variance we have, and I should say, I mean, maybe how little inventory we have as far as how deep per variant. It's common for someone to say, okay, I would like this size instead of what I have. They submit that return, and by the time it comes back, it might be out of stock. So that would be the one caveat that is really nice of starting that exchange quickly. And so that was the whole reason we wanted to do that initially, was to get that pair out for that person. However, it does cause that disconnect at the end of the period. Your inventory versus orders versus what's come back, what it's reading online versus physically back in the warehouse, it won't add up, especially when people are doing actual counting. So yeah, for us, it's a little bit more of an accounting and inventory. We try to keep the inventory very accurate, just because a lot of the variants might only have 1 or 2 items in stock. And so that's kind of why we landed on doing it manually.
Being able to manual restock when you guys took that in, that makes sense. Tommy, what about you guys?
Yeah, we do a similar thing. So we added instant exchanges last year, I think, and that's really helped with that exchange process a lot, because being a smaller brand, inventory levels you sometimes keep tight. So we ran into the situation a lot where I was just describing, where someone submits a return, by the time it gets back, that item's now out of stock. So like implementing instant exchanges has really solved that in a lot of ways. Like most of our customers tend to do instant exchange. We currently still go through manual, just because we're such a high priced item. That's still something we've held really closely, and the warehouse will basically, go through and, like you mentioned, say good to go. We'll go through that return, and as long as everything looks good, we'll process that refund or exchange. So to answer Rebecca's question, I'm pretty sure our warehouse from when we first launched said they could integrate with Loop to have it be, when they process it, as long as there's nothing flagged, it would automatically process it. I think as we continue to grow, that might be something that we look to do, but for now we've still held it really close, and have gone through, and maybe it's 20 minutes a day that we have someone go through and do that manual processing. But we've still done that process. So like if someone, what we have on our website is 3 to 5 days within arriving, the refund will be processed. Typically it's a lot quicker. We have kind of our SLA with our 3PL, where we have an agreement with how quickly they process returns, and we have an extra day or 2 baked into our website. So yeah, I mean, it could be as quick as, it depends how long it takes USPS to deliver the return, really, is what drives that. But we try to have them within 48 hours. It's kind of our internal goal from when the return arrives to issuing that refund or exchange order.
Yeah, and you mentioned you guys both have really high priced items. So we have some merchants who have maybe lower AOVs, where they'll let certain orders of certain values just go through, and we'll issue those refunds on delivered. But anything over a certain threshold in Loop, we can hold those for manual review, so you don't refund until they check in. So we definitely have some optionality within the platform. Amazing. Well, I think we're right on time to end. If there's any follow-up questions, please reach out to us, and just want to thank you guys both again for joining and chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. It was fun.
All right. Thank you both.
Yeah, thanks a lot for everything.
Bye.